He fell for a long time. Not quickly like in a movie when you only have time to scream, but slowly, almost lazily, as if the world was in no hurry to accept his death as a fact. Then he fell. The ground did not meet him softly. A hard, black crust scorching at the surface, beneath which something slowly moved, as if the earth itself was breathing heavily and with difficulty. He lay face down and did not move. Not because he could not, because he did not understand whether it was worth it. Then he realized that he was burning. Not entirely, only his palms. The surface was too hot. He still got up, slowly, raised his head and looked ahead. His name was Damien. Before this, an ordinary person. 32 years old, a translator, loved strong tea and maps of places he had never been. Died absurdly. Slipped near the wet stairs of the subway. Nothing heroic. Nothing villainous. And nevertheless, he ended up here? Here was a word that did not fit any image from his memory. The sky was not black. It was red. Dark red, almost brown, like clotted blood. Clouds of ash hung in it, and flashes of distant explosions lived there, maybe volcanoes, maybe something worse. The horizon was indistinct because of a haze that smelled of sulfur and burnt metal. The ground around was exactly scorched earth. No grass, no water, no trees. Only cracks in the black crust from which yellow steam sometimes rose. Stones melted into shapes without meaning. Puddles that were not water, they glowed with a faint pink light and smelled in such a way that Damien immediately understood. This was not for drinking. He stood in the middle of all this, and the first thing he felt was not horror and not despair, curiosity. Where was he supposed to go at all? Damien walked for 3 hours before he found the first dead spot. He called a dead spot a place where it was a little cooler. A stone ledge hanging over a small hollow. Shadow. Relative quiet. The smoke almost did not reach here. He sat down. The inventory that he discovered on himself was strange. A torn jacket made of thick fabric. Boots that, thank God, did not burn, as if they were made of something special. A small knife with a broken tip. And in his pocket, a very small thing, which he found only when his hands accidentally felt the lining. A seed. Ordinary. Small. Brown. He held it in his palm and looked at it for a long time. From where? He did not know. Maybe it had remained in his pocket from his past life. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe just an accident. But he had already decided this would be the last thing he would throw away. A seed is life. And in this place there was no life. Yet, the second discovery was pain. The body hurt for real. Hunger was real. Thirst was real. Even the heat pressed down for real. So in hell one could suffer physically. Welcome. The third discovery was tracks. Scratches on the stones around him. Not random ones. Too proper to be the wind. Someone had been here. Someone who had claws. And who walked here often enough to wear away the stone. Damien looked at the tracks carefully. Not fresh, but not very old either. He stood up, took the knife in his hand. Not out of confidence, just so his hands would not be empty, and went farther. Thirst struck by the end of the first day. Real. The kind from which vision begins to blur and the tongue dries out. Water was needed. There was no water. There were puddles. Pink, glowing, obviously poisonous. There was lava far away, near the horizon in the cracks of the earth. There was air, thick with damp smoke. Damp smoke. Damien stopped. Moisture. He remembered. In deserts, they make condensate. They take film, catch the difference in temperature between night and day. Water condenses on a cold surface. Here, the difference in temperature was insane. The rock in the shade was significantly colder than the scorching air. He did not think long. Took off his jacket, found the coldest section of rock in the shade of the ledge, and pressed the fabric tightly to the stone, pinning it on the sides with small pebbles. Then he stepped back. Waited. A long time, almost an hour. Then carefully removed it. The fabric was damp. Not soaked through, not much, but damp. He wrung it out, got 3 small drops of water, bitterish with a taste of ash, but water, real water. He closed his eyes. There it was. The first resource. It was small, almost ridiculous, but it was the beginning. On the second day, he saw them. 3 figures in the distance. They moved strangely, not like people. Too low, too fast, too unevenly. One of them was dragging something heavy. Another suddenly stopped and began beating itself against a stone. The third simply stood, hands lowered, and stared into the void. Damien lay down behind the ledge, watched, then understood. People, or rather former people. They had a human body, legs, arms, a head, but the form was already different. Arms too long, skin blackened and tightened. Faces had not completely lost their features, but enough to understand. This is what a person turns into if they die here again and again. He understood something else too. If he died, he would be reborn, but already a little less himself. Then again, and again, and in the end, he would become like them. Do not die, not once, never. This became the first main rule. He began making a shelter that same day, not because he wanted to, because he understood. Without a base, it was impossible. Without a permanent place for collecting moisture, there would be no water. Without a protected space, it was impossible to plant the seed. And without shelter, one could meet these creatures at night. He chose the place for a long time, finally found a suitable one, a deep hollow in the rock wall, about 3 meters deep, about 2 meters high. A natural cave, small but quite workable. The entrance was narrow. That was a plus. Outside there was a stone ledge giving shade, also a plus. He began building a wall at the entrance, from stones, simply. He placed one on another, chose those that fit more tightly, left a gap for ventilation, and one small observation hole in the left corner. The work took several hours. His hands were covered in blood. The stones were hot. But the wall came out. Not beautiful, workable. From the outside, the cave could now easily be missed. Damien went inside, lay down on the floor, closed his eyes, and for the first time in this world felt something similar to safety. On the third day, he made the first system, a condensation trap. Not from fabric, from stone and ash. He found several flat stones near the cave that cooled fastest at night. Placed them in a slanted little pyramid, the wide end toward the air, the narrow end downward, where he placed a hollowed-out stone as a collector. Steam from the cracks in the ground rose at night, hit the cold surfaces, condensed, flowed down. In the morning, there was a little water in the collector, already more than from the jacket. Damien tried it, bitterish, warm, but not poisonous. Good. He made 3 such traps, placed them on different sides of the cave. Then he found a place where the cracks in the ground gave more steam. It was closer to an old volcanic ledge risk, but also benefit. He made the largest trap there, a wide stone canopy. Under it, a gutter made of flat plates. The gutter led the water to a collector made from a deep stone bowl. At night, this system already gave a decent amount of water, enough not to die of thirst. Barely. But there was already a resource. There was now enough water for drinking. Barely. Very little, but enough. The next question was food. In the first days, he found something. In one of the cracks grew something resembling mold, gray-white moss that clung to the stones. He sniffed it, then very carefully licked the edge. Bitter. Not deadly, almost not nutritious. But it was organic matter. That meant life here was not absolutely impossible. He held the seed in his fist and thought, soil? No normal soil, only ash, cinders, and hot stone. Water? There is but little. Heat? There was too much of it. Light? He looked at the sky. The dark red sky in which flashes and clouds of ash constantly lived, but sometimes through them seeped a strange reddish light, uneven, flickering but constant. So there was light. Not sunlight, but there was. He began thinking about a greenhouse. A greenhouse is essentially a closed space in which the necessary temperature, humidity, and protection are maintained. In the ordinary world, it is made against the cold. Here, a greenhouse against heat was needed. He needed protection from direct heat below, protection from ash above, moisture inside, at least some kind of soil. Soil. He carefully inspected the surroundings of the cave. Moss, ash, soot, ash from something burned very long ago. Dust. He began collecting all of it. He scraped moss from the walls, ash from old cracks where there had long been no fire. He collected ash into his jacket and carried it to the cave. Mixed it. Added water from the condensate. Mixed again. The first attempt was bad. The mixture did not hold, crumbled, dried out. The second was a little better. On the third try, he added more moss and less ash, and poured in more water than seemed necessary. A thick, sticky, ugly mixture came out, like very bad soil. It would do. He made the greenhouse from stones and bones. Yes, there were bones here, among the debris near old fire pits. Whose they were, he tried not to think. He placed flat stones in a circle. Inside, the resulting soil. Above, he built a lid from large stone plates, with gaps for light and air, but closed from direct ash. Inside the greenhouse, he placed a small condensation trap, a little tube made from a strip of jacket fabric glued with ash. It dripped directly to the roots. He took the seed, held it in his palms, examined it, small, smooth, alive, and planted it in the very center. Then he closed the lid and sat beside it, and simply waited. Time passed. How much, he did not know exactly. In hell, time moved strangely. A day could last like 3, and night could flash by between 2 flashes of the red sky. He maintained the condensate, watched the greenhouse, repaired the wall at the cave, collected moss from the walls, and ate moss in small pieces, bitter, viscous. He did not die, but was constantly half-starved. On the 5th day, he saw a sprout. Small, barely visible. Pale green, almost white, thin as a thread. It stuck out of the soil mixture and reached toward the light through a gap in the stone lid. Damien looked at it for a long time. Did not believe it at first. Then leaned down and very carefully touched the ground around the sprout with his finger. Warm, a little damp, alive. And then something broke inside him. Not badly, but well. Something that had kept aside all this time let go. He laughed, alone in hell beside a stone greenhouse over one single sprout. He laughed for real, because it was the best thing he had seen since the moment he fell here. His name was Nar. Damien did not know this name at first. He simply saw a figure sitting by a distant stone and watching the greenhouse. For 3 days already. Every time Damien went out, the figure was there. On the 4th time, Damien did not hide. Went out, sat opposite, looked. Nar was a demon. Or was becoming one, his arms already slightly longer than normal, his skin darker, his eyes with yellowness. But he sat normally, looked normally, and did not rush at him. That was important. "Have you been dead long?" Damien asked. A long silence. "I don't remember exactly," Nar finally answered. His voice was hoarse but human. "How many times have you died?" Nar looked at his hands. "Enough. And you are still thinking?" "For now, yes." Damien nodded. "Then we have time." Nar finally looked at him directly. "What is that?" He nodded toward the greenhouse. "A sprout. Nothing grows here. It already grows." Silence. Nar looked for a long time, then quietly said, "How? Water from the air. Soil from ash and moss. Protection from direct heat." Nar was silent for a long time more. "Why are you doing this?" Damien looked at the greenhouse. "Because I do not want to become what those 3 by the southern stone became. The ones who no longer think." Nar lowered his gaze. "I do not want to either. Then help." Nar was silent. "Why do you need a demon helper?" Damien grinned. "Because a demon with brains is better than a loner without a tail." Nar almost smiled. Almost because his face no longer did that very well. "Good," he finally said. And this was the first expansion of the team. Nar turned out to be more useful than Damien expected. Not because he was physically stronger, although that too, but because he knew places. He had lived here longer, wandered farther, seen more. "There is a place in the north," he said on the 2nd day of working together. "The stones there are a different color. Yellow, sulfur? Probably. And water?" "There is, not clean, but less poisonous than the pink puddles." This was a breakthrough. They went together. Damien carried all the tools, the knife, stones for fire, a bag from the remains of the jacket. Nar walked first because he knew the way, and because if something lunged, better that it lunged at someone who had already died several times and, in the worst case, would endure. The place turned out to be real. A small area where water seeped from under yellow stones. Not clean, muddy, with a yellowish tint. But when Damien placed a condensation trap from stones nearby and let it work for several hours, the water that passed through evaporation became significantly cleaner. He tried it. Bitterish, sulfurous, but tolerable. "We need to move part of the system here," he said. Nar watched. "This is far from the cave. That means we need either a second base or a channel." Nar raised an eyebrow uncomprehendingly. "A channel? A gutter from stones and ash? So that the water flows from the source to us." Nar was silent for a long time. Can that be done? I don't know, Damien said honestly, but let's try. They built the gutter for a long time. The distance from the source to the cave was almost 200 meters, through cracks, uneven ground, and one dangerous section where the earth was too hot. Damien came up with the construction. The base was flat stones laid at a slope so the water would flow by gravity. The edges were side stones fastened with ash putty. Over the hottest sections, a layer of dry ash as insulation so the water would not evaporate too quickly. Nar worked without complaints. Strong, enduring, not afraid of the hot, he carried stones where Damien could only stand nearby. Sometimes he stopped and looked at his hands. They are becoming longer, he once said. I see, Damien said. It frightens me, then do not die. Nar snorted. Easy to say, I know, but it is the only way. On the 5th day, the gutter was ready. When the water went through it and reached the large stone collector by the cave, Nar stood and looked at it silently. Damien was silent too, because this was no longer accidental survival. This was real infrastructure in hell. The seed grew. At first it was just a sprout, then a small stem, then 2 little leaves. They were not bright green, as in the normal world. Dark green, almost black at the base with reddish veins. As if the plant was adapting to this sky, to this light, to this air, Damien expanded the greenhouse, added another ring of stones, improved the drip irrigation system. Now water from the gutter went not only into the collector, but also in a small thin line directly to the roots through a gap at the base of the greenhouse. Nar once asked, "What kind of tree is this?" I don't know, Damien answered honestly. You planted a seed without knowing what would grow from it? But I knew that it was alive. Nar looked at the sprouts. Do you think there will be fruit here? If there is enough water and time, yes. And we have no time, Nar said gloomily. We do, Damien objected. You yourself said that no one ages here. That means we have as much time as we want, Nar thought. That is a strange advantage, the only one we have. Better to use it? Nar found her. More precisely, he found her scream. A woman sat on a stone half a kilometer from the cave and screamed. Not from pain and not from fear. From rage. She beat her fists against the stone until they bled and screamed something inarticulate, and this had been going on for a long time, judging by how worn her hands were. Nar looked at her from afar. She is still almost human, he said, but if she continues like that... I know, Damien said. He approached. She fell silent when he sat beside her. Looked at him with such a mixture of rage and surprise that he understood. She was still thinking. She simply did not see why. What is your name? A long silence. Sena. How long have you been here? I don't know. Long. Have you died? She closed her eyes. Twice. He looked at her hands. Slightly longer than normal, but only twice it was still possible to return. Come with me. Why? Damien thought for a second. Because I have a tree growing in hell. Sena opened her eyes and looked at him like he was insane. What? A tree? Growing in hell? A real one? That is impossible. Then come and see. Sena did not stand up at once. She looked for a long time, then slowly rose and followed him. After a few days, the first ones came. Not just demons with consciousness, the ones that had lost their reason almost completely. 4 creatures from the south, tall, twisted, with skin like burnt wood. They walked straight toward the smell of water instinctively, without thought. Damien heard them half an hour before they approached. Nar had taught him to hear the sounds of steps on hot ground. They had time to prepare. Damien covered the greenhouse with additional stones. Nar stood at the entrance to the cave, Sena by the gutter, with a large flat stone in her hands. The first monster approached and roared low like something mechanical. Nar did not wait. He stepped forward and struck at once without warning. In hell, he understood that warnings do not work with those who have no language. There was a fight. Short, harsh, and unpleasant. Damien did not fight, he thought. Looked for weak spots in their movement, threw stones to distract, blocked the way. The monsters left. One could not. Nar stood with a torn shoulder and breathed heavily. Does it hurt? Sena asked. Yes, Nar answered in surprise. It still hurts here. That is good, Damien said. It means you are still alive. Nar looked at him. You strangely rejoice at someone else's pain. I rejoice that you feel it. After the attack, Damien began building a wall. Not the temporary masonry at the entrance to the cave, a big one. An outer perimeter around the cave, the greenhouse, the water collector, and the gutter. It was ambitious for 3 people in hell. But there was no choice. Nar carried the heaviest stones, his changed arms gave strength. Sina turned out to be precise and attentive. She laid the flat slabs better than anyone so that they held without mortar. Damien made a mixture of ash, sulfur, and water, an analog of rough mortar. Not ideal, but it fastened the stones enough. The wall rose slowly, day after day, a ring around their small world. For now, a little higher than human height, with one entrance, which was closed by a heavy stone slab. When the last stone lay in place and Damien ran his hand along the top row, Sina said, "It looks like a fortress. Only the beginning for now," he answered. "For hell, already a lot." Nar looked at the walls from inside. "The air is different here." Damien nodded. "The stones hold the heat more evenly. Ash does not blow directly inside. It is better for the greenhouse." Nar was silent for a while. "It is better for me too." Damien looked at him. "Yes?" "I don't know why, but here, calmer. Maybe it was just physics. The stones held the temperature, the wind did not roam. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe the place had begun to become home. The tree grew faster than it should have. Time in hell flowed differently. Fast for growth, but slow for memory. Days folded one after another, and each of them was full of work, fatigue, small victories, and almost invisible fear. And the tree grew. By the moment the wall was completed, it was already chest high. Dark green, strong, strangely beautiful against the background of black stone. The leaves shone as if covered with a layer of light wax. Sina came to it first every morning. She talked to it. Quietly, almost inaudibly. Damien did not listen. It was hers. And one morning she called him with a voice in which there was something that sounded completely inappropriate in hell. Joy. He came over. On one of the branches hung a fruit, small, dark red, almost purple, the size of a fist. All 3 stood and looked at it silently. Nar was the first to stretch out his hand and pull it back. "You first," he said to Damien. Damien carefully took off the fruit, turned it around, smelled it. It smelled of something surish, alive, strange. Not an apple, not a plum. Something in between, something of its own. He took a bite, sour, slightly bitter, but juicy. Real juice, real flesh. He closed his eyes and felt hunger retreat. A little, but it retreated. "Alive," he said quietly. Nar took the fruit from his hands, bit into it, chewed for a long time. "I do not remember the last time I ate something that did not cause pain," he said. Sina ate silently, and something was running down her cheeks that seemed impossible in hell. Tears. The 3 of them stood by the tree in hell and ate the first fruit. And the world around was just as terrible, hot, and red. But here, inside the walls, there was a living tree, living people, and the first fruit. And that was already more than nothing. It was the beginning. He was not found the way Lena was. Not a scream. Not an accident. He came himself. In the morning, when Damien went out to check the outer gutter, a person was already sitting by the wall. Not a monster, a person. Thin in the remains of clothing, with hands that had not changed too much yet, and with a face on which one thing could be read. He had already decided everything long ago. Damien stopped at the gate. "How do you know it is safe here?" The man raised his head. "Smell." "What?" "Water. And something alive." He was silent for a while. "I walked toward this smell for 3 days. Damien looked at him. Name, song, Korean, or a person with a Korean name. In hell, that did not matter. "Have you died?" "Once." Song lowered his gaze. "I do not want to again." "Then come in. But first, the rules." Song raised his head. "Rules?" "Yes, there are rules here." This was news to everyone, including Nar and Lena, who stood behind the gate and listened. Damien said them aloud for the first time, not because he had only just invented them, but because he understood. When there are more people, rules must be spoken, not just thought. First, do not die, at any cost. This is the main thing. Second, everything you do for the common good. not separately for yourself. Third, if you see that someone may die, you help. People do not survive alone here. Fourth, monsters do not enter, none and never, even if they look like people. Fifth, do not touch the tree without permission. Song listened seriously, then nodded. I agree. What can you do? Song thought. Chemistry. Before death, I worked as a chemical engineer. Damien looked at him with new interest, then welcome. Song inspected their water system an hour after arriving, silently, attentively, with the face of a person who sees not water but formulas. Then he said, your water from the gutter contains sulfur, possibly a small amount of acid and traces of other substances. I know that, Damien said. Bitterish. Bitterness is not the worst thing. The scary thing is that with long use, it accumulates. Song looked around. Do you have anything porous? Not metal. Stone. Volcanic tuff can be found, Nar said. In the north. Bring it. Nar left. While he was on the way, Song inspected the greenhouse. He looked at the tree for a long time, touched the leaves. It has adapted, he said. Do you see the red veins? I see. This is not a disease. This is adaptation. It extracts something from the air that is not in the soil. This world is changing it. But it lives. Is that good or bad? It is interesting, Song answered. And for the first time in all this time, something like fascination flashed across his face. When Nar brought the tuff, Song began the filter. Simple, almost primitive, but chemically justified. He made several layers, large stone, then medium, then fine porous tuff, then ash that Damien had specially calcined in the heat. The water passed through it slowly, drop by drop. But what came out below was noticeably cleaner. Song gave it to Damien to try. He tried it. Better. Much better, Song corrected. The hydrogen sulfide partly went away. The sediment too. Can this be drunk constantly? For now, yes. If we find a cleaner source, we will switch to it. Damien looked at the filter. Simple, rough, made from nothing. From porous stone, ash, and time. But it was progress. Real, measurable progress. Damien was not searching by chance. After the first tree gave fruit, he began walking along the perimeter farther than before. He inspected cracks, old hollows, dark corners between stones. Where there is life, there are always traces, and he found them. Not a seed. Spores. Small, almost invisible, gray-brown dots on the inner side of a large flat stone. Mushroom spores. Maybe. He carefully scraped them off with a knife into a small piece of cloth. Brought them to Song. He examined them for a long time. Mushrooms? Damien asked. Something mushroom-like, Song answered evasively. Everything here's a little different. Can we try to grow it? Mushrooms need organic matter. A base. We have moss, ash, remains of the fruit. Song thought. We will try. But not in the greenhouse with the tree. Separately. Why? Because we do not know whether it will be symbiosis or competition. Damien nodded. That was reasonable. They made a second greenhouse, smaller than the first. Squat, with a dark inner surface, Damien coated the walls from inside with wet ash and let it dry, creating a dark porous surface. Inside, a mixture of moss, ash, and ground fruit flesh. Spores on the surface. They covered it from above so that there was air, but direct heat did not get in. And again, they waited. Nar sat beside the greenhouses every evening. Sena once asked him, "Why do you constantly sit here?" Nar was silent for a second. Because when you look at something that grows, it is harder to think about bad things. Sena lowered her gaze. Yes, she said quietly, and also sat beside him. This attack was different. Those who came were not just lone monsters going toward the smell. There were 7 of them, and they walked organized in a line with proper distance, covering one another. This meant only one thing. Among them, there was someone with consciousness. Nar saw them from the upper stone that served as an observation post. They are coming from the east. 7 of them? Formation? Yes. So they have a leader, Damien said. He thought quickly. Monsters without reason are strength and instinct. They need obstacles and noise to throw them off. But monsters with a leader are tactics. They will look for a weak spot. There was one weak spot, the gate. He made the decision immediately. Song inside covered the greenhouses with additional stones. Sena up above with stones. Nar at the gate. And you? Nar asked. I am outside. What? If the leader is inside the group, I need to see him before they reach the wall. Nar looked at him. This is madness. This is tactics. And he went out beyond the gate. He did not fight. He watched. 7 were walking, and Damien could now see them close. 5 were pure monsters, far gone, almost faceless. 1 large one with remnants of human posture walking slightly behind, and 1 more small one with quick eyes who moved not straight, but slightly to the side. The small one was the leader. Damien raised his hands. Stop. The monsters did not stop, but the small one slowed down. You think? Damien said directly to him. I see it. That means you understand words. The small one stopped completely. The others too, a fraction of a second later. Water is there, Damien said, and food and walls. Enter with weapons, you die. Enter without them, we talk. Silence. The small one looked at him with an expression in which aggression, hunger, and something resembling curiosity were mixed. Then he turned to his own and produced something, not words, more like a sound. Guttural, short. The other 5 monsters turned around and left. The large one remained. The small one stepped toward Damien. Speak, he said. His voice was hoarse, difficult, but words. Damien exhaled. Then let's go. His name turned out to be almost forgotten even by himself. Vest, he said when Damien asked. Or it was like that. Now I do not know. Vest had died 8 times. It was visible. His body had changed greatly, low, broad, with arms like an ape's and a face in which only the lower half remained human. His eyes were completely yellow, but there was light in them, alive, thinking. Vest inspected everything inside the perimeter with such attention that even Nar tensed. But he touched nothing, only looked. He stood longest by the tree. It is real, he said, not as a question. Yes, Sina answered. Vest slowly stretched out his hand and stopped it a centimeter from the leaf. Did not touch, just held his hand nearby. Warm, he said quietly. Living things are always warm, Damien said. Vest lowered his hand. I do not remember warmth. It was said without pity, just as a fact. But something in this phrase struck everyone harder than any attack. Then Vest turned to Damien. You are building a place here. Yes? Why? Damien thought for a second. Because if we do not build, we die. And if we constantly die here, we become what the 5 behind your back became. Vest was silent. You want me to help? I want you to accept the rules. Which ones? Damien said them aloud again. Vest listened without moving, then said, the 5th rule. Do not touch the tree. Yes, I did not touch it. I know. That is why you are still here. Vest looked for a long time, then quietly said, the large one with me will stay. His name is Brog. He no longer speaks, but he listens. And he has a lot of strength. Good. When I die many times and stop thinking, Vest added evenly without emotion, do not let me back in. Damien looked at him. We will try to make sure you do not die. That would be better. After a few days, the first thing appeared in the small greenhouse. Not a mushroom in the usual sense. Something gray-white, flat, with a wavy edge. Similar to a mushroom, but without a stem. Just a layer growing directly from the soil mixture. Song inspected it for a long time without touching. Alive, he finally said. Edible? I do not know. Poisonous? I also do not know. Damien looked at him. Then how do we find out? Song took a small piece and placed it on a stone by the fire. The small heat from the heated stone was enough. Then smelled it. Then carefully placed a tiny piece on his tongue and sat motionless for about 10 minutes. It does not burn, he finally said. It is not bitter. The aftertaste is strange, earthy, and we will wait an hour. An hour passed. Song was alive, normal, no worse than usual. You try, he told Damien. Damien ate a small piece. The taste really was earthy with a barely perceptible bitterness. Not tasty, but tolerable. An hour later, both were alive. That counted as a success. Will it grow on its own? Damien asked. If the base is not touched, yes. We only need to add moisture and a little organic matter. Then we make more such greenhouses. Song nodded. And one more thing. What? I need to try adding something to the soil mixture from the crack by the western exit. What is there? A strange sediment. Red, fine. I think it is organic carbon. Where is it from? Song looked at him. from what was alive before, a very long time ago. Damien understood. So there had once been life here, or something like it, and that something had died and become part of the soil. This was an important thought, because if there had once been life in hell, then it is possible. Not as an exception, but as a system. Now there were 6 of them: Damien, Nar, Sena, Song, Vezd, Brog, who did not speak, but worked in such a way that he replaced 3. And with 6 people, one could think about more. Damien began designing a large greenhouse, not a small ring of stones, a real enclosed area. He wanted a space at least 4 by 4 meters, stone walls chest high, an upper covering made of flat plates with adjustable gaps to change ventilation, an inner gutter for watering, several sections for different crops, a separate bed for the mushroom layer, and the transplanted tree in the center. Sena stopped him on the last point. You want to transplant the tree? It is already big. The small greenhouse is restraining it. If we transplant it, it may not survive, Damien thought. If we do not transplant it, it will press against the stones and stop growing. Are you sure we need to risk it? No, but I am sure that leaving it cramped is definitely bad. Sena looked at the tree for a long time. Then I will do it myself. Why you? Because I have been with it from the beginning. It knows me. Damien did not argue. In hell, where rationality was everything, sometimes one had to trust the irrational. The large greenhouse was built by the whole team. Brog carried stones that the others could not move. Vest dug. His changed hands easily entered the hard soil. Nar laid the walls with the precision he had gained since the first construction. Song designed the ventilation system. Damien watched the overall scheme. Sena prepared the soil. She did it carefully, like a ritual. Ash, moss, red sediment from the western crack, water through the filter, a little flesh from the fruits of the previous harvest. Kneaded, mixed, tested by touch. Too dry, add water. No, if I add it now, then it will dry out faster later. Another base is needed. She found a small layer of dark, almost oily mud in one of the old cracks. The smell was not very good, but the structure was dense, holding moisture. Song sniffed it. This is an old organic layer. Very old. Suitable for soil? In a mixture, yes. Sena added it. The soil came out different, more alive to the touch. Dark, heavy, real. The transplanting of the tree took a whole day. Sena did everything slowly. First, she dug around the roots carefully without damaging a single one. Nar helped support the clod of earth. Vest and Brog carried everything into the center of the new greenhouse. Then cover the roots, water, close from above, leaving gaps, and wait. The tree stood motionless for 2 days. Not a leaf, not a movement. Sena did not leave it for long. On the 3rd day, she saw, on one of the branches, the youngest one, a small folded leaf had appeared. Tight, dark, shiny. The tree lives, she called everyone. They stood and looked at this one small leaf. This was a moment that Damien remembered forever. Not because it was a great achievement, but because in that moment, 6 completely different beings, people, half-demons, changed ones. Those who had lost something important in this place stood together and looked at one leaf with one and the same expression. Hope? Vest became the main scout. Not because he was appointed. It simply turned out that he knew more about hell than all the others. He had died many times, walked a lot, seen a lot. He told stories in the evening when the team gathered by the greenhouse. In the north, there's a place called the Burned Center. It always burns there. Nothing can be built there. Is that his territory? Damien asked. No one's. It simply burns. And in the east? In the east, there are those who died too many times long ago. They do not attack at once, but they remember malice. That is dangerous. Are there still living people? With consciousness? Vest thought. There are. A few. I saw 2 on the western slope. They are afraid of everything. They hide. Do not come out. Have they heard about us? The smell of water spreads. Soon they will hear. Damien nodded. When they come, we accept them. If they agree to the rules. And if they do not agree, then they do not enter. Vest was silent for a while. You're building something like law. I am building a place where one can live. One cannot live in hell. Before, one could not grow trees either. Vest looked at the greenhouse. You are stubborn. Call it whatever you want. Vest almost smiled. I call it dangerous. A pause, but useful. The mushroom layer gave a harvest every few days. Flat gray-white sheets fused together and grew. They were cut off, leaving the base, organic matter was added, and they grew again. The tree gave a second harvest, already 5 fruits, larger than the first, darker, with a more complex taste, sour, bitter, with something astringent at the end, which gradually turned into sweetness. Damien saved the seeds from every fruit. Song dried them in a special way on a hot stone in the shade, so as not to kill the embryo, but to remove excess moisture. There were already 7 seeds. Enough for a second tree, Song said. First we expand the greenhouse. More? Yes, if the trees grow and fill the space, we will be cramped again. Song nodded. Without surprise now, simply accepted it. Damien caught himself thinking that his team had stopped being surprised by his ideas. That was a good sign. When people stop being surprised by a plan, it means they have begun to believe in it. They came a week later, as Vest had said, 2 of them. Brother and sister, judging by their faces. Young, a little over 20, maybe a little more. Both had died recently and ended up here together, which was already strange in itself. The sister was named Ami. The brother, Theo almost did not speak. He looked at everything with such sharp wariness that Nar once quietly said to Damien, "This one may snap." "I know. Watch him." Ami spoke for both of them, quickly, nervously, but intelligently. "We saw your light at night," she said at the first meeting. Light? Damien did not understand at first. Yes, green, weak, from the greenhouse. Damien looked at the large greenhouse. He did not know this, but apparently the tree glowed faintly at night, but enough that in the darkness of hell it was noticeable from a distance. Living light in a dead world. Not a bad landmark. Ami turned out to be useful immediately. Before death, she had worked as an agronomist. Or had been an agronomy student. She did not remember exactly. It already seemed distant to her. When she saw the greenhouse, she was silent for a long time, inspecting the soil, roots, irrigation system. Then she said, "The roots of the tree want deeper." "There is nowhere deeper," Damien said. "There is hot stone there. Then insulation needs to be made under the soil. A layer of ash and porous stone, so that there is a buffer between the roots and the heat." Damien looked at her. "Why did we not think of it ourselves?" Ami shrugged. "Because you thought like builders, not like gardeners." The work was delicate. The roots could not be damaged, the water could not be blocked, the soil structure could not be disturbed. Ami directed. Brog, carefully as much as possible with his hands, lifted the edges of the soil layer. Song prepared a mixture of porous tuff and ash. Vest handed over materials. Damien watched and helped where precision was needed. The insulation layer was laid along the edges below without touching the central clod of earth at the roots. They simply added a buffer around it. Ami said, "Careful. Here is a thin root. See it?" "I see. Go round it. Do not press. A little to the left. Stop. Now fill it in slowly." It took almost the whole day. When they finished, Ami stood up, wiped her hands on her pants, and looked at the tree. It stood calmly. Not a single leaf trembled. "It is better for it now," she said. "I hope." "Do not hope. I know." Damien looked at her. "You are confident. I am an agronomist, former. Now the only one in hell, so active." The next day, Vest returned earlier than usual. This was a bad sign. Damien saw him from afar, fast running, which for Vest was already almost normal with his changed body. But now there was something nervous in it. "They are coming from the east," he said without stopping at the gate. "How many?" "Many. Dozens." "Organized?" "No. A pack." Damien thought quickly. A pack is not tactics. It is mass. A mass that goes toward smell, toward light, toward instinct. Will they reach us? If they're going this way, yes. When? By sunset. Maybe earlier. Damien turned to the team. Everyone was looking at him. 8 people. Of different degrees of humanity, of different experience, but all his. "Everyone inside the wall," he said. "Cover the greenhouses. Put the water under shelter. Brog to the gate, Nar to the upper stone. Vest with me, what are you going to do?" Ami asked. Damien looked at the wall. Hold. The wall was good, but it was not designed for dozens of monsters at the same time. Damien understood that. He stood beside Nar on the upper stone and looked east. First there was dust, then a sound, low, scraping, as if something heavy was being dragged over the scorching ground. Then them. Damien saw them through the gaps in the wall. Different. Some almost unrecognizable. Some still kept their form, all on one instinct. Toward the smell. Toward the light. Toward something alive. They will not stop, Nar said quietly. No, Damien agreed. Then what? Damien thought. In games, he had one habit. When there are too many enemies for a frontal defense, do not hold them at the wall. Lead them aside. Make them lose the target. Here it was impossible to hide the smell of water, but another could be created. Song, he called. The chemist came up. Can you make something with the smell? Strong. To overpower the smell of water in the tree. Song thought for 3 seconds. There is sulfur sediment from the crack. If we burn it on the wind from the east, the smell will go in the opposite direction. Do it. Song left. Damien looked at the approaching mass. Vest, he said. Do you remember where your 5 are? Yes, I need noise. Far from us. On the other side? Vest looked at him. You want me to distract them? I want part of the pack to go not here. That is dangerous. Yes, I will die if I do not make it in time. Then do not die. Vest looked at him for a long time, then nodded shortly and jumped over the wall. The next hour was the longest in hell. Song set fire to the sulfur sediment at the eastern gap in the wall. The smell went sharp, suffocating, overpowering everything. The pack slowed down. Part turned aside to where Vest with his 5 monsters was rattling stones and making sounds that attracted attention. The rest continued walking toward the wall. Nar and Brog held the gate. Sina threw stones from above, not killing, but simply preventing them from coming right up close. Ami stood by the greenhouse with a large flat stone and was ready. Theo, for the first time in all this time, turned out to be useful. He moved along the inner wall, plugging gaps with additional stones at such speed that Damien only had time to nod to him in gratitude. The pack beat against the walls for a long time. Then, when the sulfur smell became unbearable and Vest was leading part of them farther and farther away, the mass began to disperse. Not leave, just lose a single direction. 2 hours later, there were only a few loners by the wall. Nar and Brog handled them. Damien sat down on the cold stone and closed his eyes. Alive. Everyone. The greenhouse intact. The tree whole. Vest returned an hour later with his side torn open, but alive. His 5 came after him. Damien looked at him silently. You said not to die, Vest said. You managed. Barely. That is enough. After the pack, there was silence. Long, heavy. Then Sina said, we need a higher wall. Yes, Damien answered. And a second line. Yes, and distant posts. Yes, and more people. Damien looked at her. You have begun to think like a builder. Sina shrugged. No choice. Song, who was sitting nearby, added, we need not only a wall. We need something that will keep the pack from coming here before they reach the wall. What do you mean? A chemical perimeter. A sulfur smell around the outer zone. Permanent? Not necessarily, only in case of a threat. But always keep supplies. Damien nodded. Good. The list of work is this. Raise the wall, distant posts, sulfur supply, second line. And a second gutter, Ami added. If a pack blocks the first source, we need a second. Agreed. The team looked at him, tired, damaged, some barely human outwardly, but alive. Thinking. Building. Damien stood up. Rest today. Tomorrow we begin. No one objected. At night, Damien sat by the greenhouse alone, looked at the tree. In the silence, in which every now and then the distant sound of hell could be heard, the rumble of the earth, the crackle of stone, something distant and constant, the tree was glowing. Weakly, barely. Green light, soft, almost unnoticeable at another time. But now, at night, after the pack, after the fear, after the work, it was clearly visible. Living light in the deadest place. Damien thought about how much still lay ahead. A higher wall, a second water source, a second gutter, new trees, expansion of the team, sulfur perimeter, distant posts. And then what? When all this was done, what next? He did not know. But he knew one thing. In the place where he was told to die, he was growing a tree. In the place where everything was supposed to be fire and pain, there was water and fruit. In the place where people turn into monsters from despair, there is a team that chose something else. This is not paradise yet. Far from paradise. But it is no longer just hell. It is the beginning of something that does not yet have a name. And Damien sat, looked at the green light, thought about tomorrow's walls, and felt almost good. Almost. But in hell, that was already very much. In the morning, Theo spoke for the first time. Not much, one word, but it turned out to be important. Damien was checking the upper row of the wall. Several stones had shifted during yesterday's pack. They had to be reinforced when he heard behind his back, Eden. He turned around. Theo stood by the greenhouse and looked at the tree. What? Damien asked. Eden, Theo repeated. His voice was quiet, hoarse from long silence. This place should be called Eden. Damien looked at him. Eden is paradise. No. Theo shook his head. Eden is a garden. Paradise comes later. First, a garden. Damien was silent for a long time, then looked at the tree, at the walls, at the gutter, at the greenhouses, at the people who were waking up and beginning their morning tasks. Eden. Good, he said, and discussed it no more. The place received a name. They began building the second wall immediately. Not because the enemy was standing at the gate right now, but because in hell the enemy always comes when you think you have time. Damien had long understood. In this world, you cannot build only when it is burning. You need to build in advance. He marked out the perimeter of the second line, wider than the first by 20 meters on all sides. This gave space between the walls, a narrow corridor in which a pack could be stopped, even if it broke through the outer line. The concept was simple, 2 rings instead of 1. The first restraining, the second main. Between them, traps, sulfur supply, stones for dropping. Vest listened to the plan and nodded. This is smart. This is standard, Damien answered. Not for hell. Not for hell yet. Nar grinned. You say not yet too often, because not yet is not a refusal. It is a plan. There was a lot of stone. In hell, there was enough stone. The problem was different. Large blocks required a lot of strength to move, and small stones did not give the necessary strength to the wall. Brog solved this problem, not because he was specifically asked. Simply one morning, Damien saw Brog standing by a large stone block and looking at it so long that it itself already seemed like work. Then Brog struck the block from a certain side. Once, then again. The block split evenly into 2 almost perfect parts. Everyone fell silent. Brog lifted one half and carried it to the wall. He can split stone, Song said quietly. I see, Damien answered. That is valuable. Very. Damien approached Brog. He did not speak, simply looked. Do you understand me? Damien asked. Brog nodded. Then you are now in charge of stone. Brog nodded again, turned and went to the next block. Thus, the first material specialization appeared in the team. The second wall rose faster than the first, because there were more of them now, because they had skills, because Brog gave proper blocks, because Nar already knew how to lay so that each stone held without extra mortar, and because now there was meaning. That was important. When a person, or a half-demon, or an almost demon sees that his work is part of something larger, he works differently. Vest once said it in words better than Damien could have himself. When I wandered alone, I carried stones so as not to think. Now I carry stones so that something stands. The difference is big, Damien answered. Yes, Vest agreed. Very big. While the wall was being built, Song searched for water, systematically. Every day in the morning, a short outing with simple tools. A knife, a piece of cloth, a small collector made of stone. He checked cracks, watched the steam, tested sediments by smell. On the 4th day, he found it. Not a surface source, a deep one. In a small crater to the northwest where the ground had collapsed long ago and formed a bowl. Water from condensate gathered naturally in the bowl. The place was low, the air above it colder. The difference gave sediment. The water in the bowl was better than by the yellow stones. Not ideal, but better. Song brought a sample, ran it through the filter, gave it to Damien to try. This is almost normal, Damien said. By the standards of hell, very normal, Song answered. Can we make a gutter here? The distance is greater, and the terrain is more difficult. But yes. Then we do it. The second gutter was built in parallel with the second wall. This was madness. 2 large projects at the same time with 8 people. But Damien distributed it like this. 4 on the wall, 2 on the gutter, 2 always inside for guard and greenhouse. Ami began complaining that she did not have enough hands for the new garden. I do not have time for the tree and the mushrooms and preparing new soil, she said. You need an assistant. We have no spare people. Not yet, Damien answered. Ami looked at him. You are saying not yet again, because new ones will come soon. How do you know? Because the green light is visible far away at night. The 5 monsters that had helped Vest during the pact did not leave. They stayed at a distance from the wall, not inside, not outside in the usual sense, somewhere between, in the dead zone around Eden. Vest spoke with them every day. Damien watched from afar. It was strange. Vest communicated with them not in words, more with sounds, gestures, some mixture of one and the other that Damien did not understand. One evening he asked directly, "Can they become part of the team?" Vest thought for a long time. 2, possibly. 3? No, they have gone too far. What does 2 possibly mean? The 2 still have something inside. Not words, but something. Protective instinct, attachment. If given a reason, they will choose it. What reason? A place, the smell of water, food, the tree. Damien looked at the 5 by the outer wall. 2 of them were sitting. One was looking straight at the greenhouse through a gap, for a long time, motionless. Try, Damien said. If it does not work, then they stay outside, but they will not enter inside without rules anyway. Vest nodded. For the next 2 days, he worked with them. On the 3rd day, 2 entered through the gate. They did not speak, barely moved at first, stood at the entrance and sniffed the air. Then one slowly approached the greenhouse, stopped a meter away, just stood nearby. Sina looked at him. He is afraid to break it, she said quietly. Yes, Vest agreed. Then he suits us. Vests 2 were named simply first and second, not because they had no names, but because they did not remember theirs and had not found new ones yet. The team became 10. Theo built silently and quickly. When he stopped being just a frightened person by the wall and began working, it turned out that he had a special talent. He saw the structure, not like a drawing, like space. He could look at a section of wall and immediately say where the weak spot was, where another stone was needed, where the excess could be removed. Damien noticed this on the 2nd day of building the 2nd wall. Theo, he called, look. Theo came over, inspected the corner section. The slope is wrong here. If pressure comes from the right, this row will go outward. How to fix it? A buttress? A short transverse wall outside. A support. Damien did not know the word at once, but understood the essence. Do you know construction? No, I just see how it stands. That is better. They placed buttresses around the entire perimeter of the outer wall. This strengthened it so much that even Nar admitted, now it will not go. Theo gradually became the quiet architect of Eden. He did not command, did not argue. Simply walked, looked, sometimes moved a stone from place to place without explanations, and then it turned out that it had been right. Ami once said to her brother, "You found yourself here." Theo was silent for a while. Maybe. You barely talked for almost a month. I had nothing to talk about. And now? Now there is. It was a small conversation, but Damien heard it and remembered. Because in hell, where people lost themselves gradually and irreversibly, finding something, any work, any meaning, was more important than a wall. A wall holds from the outside. Meaning holds from the inside. The mushroom layer spread. Ami expanded the small greenhouse once again and added a new section there specially for it. The mushrooms grew not only in flat layers now, small rounded forms appeared, resembling caps, different ones. Some completely white, almost glowing, some dark, almost black at the base. Song checked each new species. This one can be eaten, he said about the white ones. The taste is neutral, there is satiety. This one I am not sure, he said about the dark ones. We observe for now. And this one? Ami showed a small one with an orange edge. Song sniffed for a long time. Do not touch. Why? The smell is strange. Not dangerous maybe, but strange. You are playing it safe. In hell there is no such concept. Ami sighed but agreed. 3 days later, the orange mushroom grew to the size of a palm and began glowing at night, just like the tree. Everyone came to look. It is not poisonous, Song said. It is bioluminescent. Glowing. Such things exist on Earth, Ami said. In jungles. This is not a jungle. But something similar is happening. Damien looked at the orange mushroom, at the green tree, at the weak light inside the greenhouse. If this is visible outside at night, he said, then Eden now glows even stronger. Is that bad? Sana asked. It means that we will be found more often. And we need to be ready to accept those worth accepting and stop those who cannot be let in. How to tell the difference? Damien looked at the tree. Those who are afraid to break it are ours. Ami chose the best seed. Of the 7 saved, the largest, with a smooth surface without cracks. Held it in her hands, smelled it, performed a small test, placed it in water, and checked whether it would sink. It sank. That meant it was viable. She chose the place for a long time. Not next to the first tree, she said. The root systems will compete. Then where? In the northern corner of the greenhouse. There is more shade from the wall there, less direct heat, but less light. It will manage. The first tree has already shown that it can adapt. Damien trusted her. The second seed was planted with the same ritual details as the first. Only now it was no longer an accident. It was technology. An insulating layer under the soil, a mixture of ash, moss, red sediment, and old organic matter. Drip irrigation through a thin gap. Enough shade, and waiting. While waiting for the second sprout, Ami began an experiment. She took part of the mushroom layer and tried to grow it directly under the first tree by the roots. Why? Song asked. In nature, mushrooms and trees often live together. Fungal mycelium helps roots get water and minerals. This is not nature. This is something trying to become it. Song looked at her. You think this place is changing? I think this place reacts to what we do. That is too. Song searched for the word. That is too imprecise. I am an agronomist. For me, precision is growth. If it grows, then it is right. Song did not find what to answer, and then, a few days later, when the first threads of fungal mycelium really stretched toward the roots of the tree and the leaves of the tree became noticeably darker, denser, more alive, he only nodded silently. Ami was right. The place was reacting. It was not visible right away. Damien noticed it by chance. A dark figure by the outer wall, motionless like stone. It had been standing there for several hours already. Not attacking, not approaching the gate, just standing. Nar had been watching it from the observation stone for a long time already. He has been there since night, Nar said. Alone. Alone? A monster? I do not know. Too motionless for a monster. Damien climbed up, looked. The figure was tall. Too tall, over 2 meters. Its clothing, or what remained of it, was black, almost merging with the stone. Arms long, but the posture. The posture was human. More human than Vest's now, although Vest had died only 8 times. This was strange. Damien went out the gate alone. Nar shouted something to him from the observation stone. Damien did not turn around. He approached to 10 meters and stopped. You have been standing for a long time. The figure slowly turned its head. The face was covered, or what should have been? A face was too dark to make out the features. I am waiting, said the voice. Low, even, without effort, simply a sound that was everywhere at once. What are you waiting for? For you to come out yourself. Why? To talk. Damien looked at him. You are not a refugee, he said slowly. No, you are not a monster. No, then who? A long pause. I have been here a long time. The voice did not change. Longer than you can imagine. You do not die? Not anymore. So you are not human. Not anymore. Damien felt something strange. Not fear, rather realization. A feeling that the conversation was happening on a different level than usual. Do you know what we are building here? Yes, and what do you think about it? A pause. I think this should not be possible, but it is possible. Yes, the voice agreed. And that is interesting. He had been called, or was called, differently. He himself did not give a name. Said only, call me whatever you want. Names do not mean much here. Damien called him Old One. Not because he was decrepit, simply because it was the most accurate. They sat outside the wall at a distance that Damien controlled. Nar stood on the observation stone and did not take his eyes off them. Vest came and stopped beside the gate silently, just in case. Old One spoke slowly. Not because he could not speak quickly, but because he was used to a different time. This world was not always like this. Like what? Damien asked. Burned out. Empty. What was there before? A pause. Life. Not like yours, different, but life. Damien listened. Then something happened. Then people came, the old one said. Your world found a way to throw here what it did not want to keep. Malice, cruelty, despair. And there became too much of it, and life left. Life was crushed. The old one looked at Damien. What you are doing inside your walls is the first time in a very long time that something alive is not just holding on here, but growing. Are you against it? No, then why did you come? The old one was silent for a while. To warn. About what? That hell is not empty. It is governed. And what you are building has already been noticed, not only by those who died and became monsters. Damien felt cold despite the heat around him. Noticed by whom? By those who decide what is possible here, and what will they do? I do not know. For the first time in the conversation, the old one turned his head slightly, and Damien saw some detail of his face from the corner of his eye. Something that had once been human, and had very long ago become something else. But they will come to look. And that is not the same as a pack. They are smarter. They are different, Damien thought. What do you advise? Build faster, the old one said. The more living things you create before they come, the harder it will be to destroy it. Life is harder to kill than emptiness. Damien nodded slowly. Will you help us? No, why? Because I am not against you, but I am not with you either. I observe? Have you observed for a long time? Very. And what have you seen in that time? The old one stood up. I have seen everything that came here. A pause. You are the first who began to build, not destroy. And he left. Slowly, toward the side that seemed simply like darkness between the stones. Damien sat for a long time after he left, then stood up and went in through the gate. Nar jumped down from the observation stone. Who was that? I do not know exactly. Dangerous? I do not think so. What did he say? Damien was silent for a while. That we need to build faster. He gathered everyone in the evening, truly everyone for the first time, including first and second who did not speak but understood, including Brog, who sat by the wall and looked at the fire. Damien told them about the conversation with the old one, without unnecessary embellishments, just facts. When he finished, there was silence. Then Song asked, Who are those who govern hell? I do not know. Demons? Not in the sense in which we use the word. Then who? Damien looked at the fire. I think they are the ones for whom this whole world is a system. And in this system, we are doing something we are not supposed to do. Sina quietly said, We live. Yes, Damien agreed. We live where we are only supposed to suffer and die. Vest listened, then said, That means they will come to stop us. Possibly. Then we need to be stronger before they come. Exactly. Nar raised his head. How? Damien looked at the greenhouse, at the tree, at the glowing orange mushroom, at the second wall which was almost finished. We need not just to strengthen the walls, we need to expand the garden. More trees, more water, more life. Because the old one was right, life is harder to kill than emptiness. We will not make it in time, Theo said quietly. We will make as much as we make, Damien answered, and that will be more than nothing. Silence. Then Amy said, We have 5 more seeds. If all sprout, 3 trees total. Plus mushrooms, plus moss, plus new soil, plus the second water source when the gutter is ready. Damien looked at them. 10 beings, people, half-people, almost demons. Different, broken to different degrees, but alive. Thinking, his team. Then we begin tomorrow, he said. They built the gutter to the northwestern crater for 4 days. The terrain was difficult. Several ledges, one deep collapse that had to be bridged. The bridge became a separate task. Theo designed it. Brog shaped the stone. Nar laid it. The construction was simple, but it worked. 2 large, flat stones laid as spans, with supports at the edges. Above, a gutter that carried water across the collapse. When the water first passed over the bridge and flowed farther toward Eden, Theo stood nearby and looked with an expression that Damien could not name exactly. Are you satisfied? Damien asked. Theo was silent for a while. I built a bridge in hell, he said. That is, yes, I am satisfied. Damien smiled, not because everything was good, but because it was the right moment. When the second gutter began working, the water reserve in Eden doubled. This changed a lot. Ami immediately got the ability to water more. Song expanded the filtration system. There was now always a supply in the collector not only for drinking, but also for the needs of the greenhouse. Damien introduced a new rule: always keep a reserve supply of water. Never spend it completely. Why? Sina asked. Because if they come and block the gutter, we must have a supply for several days. And if longer? Then by that time we will find a third source. You always think ahead. Someone has to. The second sprout appeared quietly, without ceremony. Just in the morning, Amy came to the northern corner of the greenhouse and saw a small white stem sticking out of the soil. Barely visible. Very thin. She called only Damien. Look. He looked. It is growing. Yes, faster than the first. The soil is better. We learned a lot from the first time. That was true. The second greenhouse was more thought out. Better insulation, more precise watering, richer soil mixture. Can 3 more seeds be planted now? Damien asked. Not all at once. First we wait until the second tree stands. We will see what changes. Why? Because 2 trees nearby are already in interaction. They will affect the soil, the air, the light. Before adding a third, we need to understand how the environment will change. Damien nodded. Ami thought like a scientist. That was valuable. Song noticed it first. The air inside the walls is different, he said once. In what way? Damien asked. Lighter, less sulfur. The smell of burning is weaker. That is because the walls protect. No, the walls existed before and this change is new. Song looked at the tree. It is it. The tree? Trees process air. That is basic biology. A pause. I just did not think it worked in hell too. Damien looked at the first tree, then at the small sprout of the second. So the more trees, the better the air. Theoretically, yes. And practically? Practically, we need a garden, not 2 trees. We are working on that. Song nodded. I want to try something else, he added. What? Neutralize the acid from the pink puddles. If enough ash solution is added to it, the pH will change. It will stop being poisonous. Why? Because there is water there. A lot of water. If we make it usable, our reserves will grow many times over. Damien looked at him. Can you do that? I do not know, but I will try. How much time? Several days for an experiment, then try. At night, Eden now glowed seriously. The green light of the tree. The orange light of the mushrooms. A faint bluish reflection from the water in the collector. Damien stood on the observation stone and looked at it from above. A small glowing oasis in a dark red world. Beautiful. Impossible. Real. Vest climbed up beside him. They see it from afar, he said. I know. New people will come. Yes, and those the old ones spoke about will come. Also, yes, are you not afraid? Damien thought. I am afraid, he answered honestly, but that does not change what needs to be done. What needs to be done? Build, grow, hold on. Vest looked at the light of Eden. Do you know what I thought when I died for the 8th time? He said quietly. What? That this was it. That there was no more meaning. That the next time I would stop being myself. But you did not stop. Because of the smell. Vest was silent for a while. I smelled water and something alive. And I wanted to look. And I came. And you came. Silence. So the smell of water and life is the most important thing we are doing here, Damien said. Yes, Vest agreed. It is what keeps us human. They stood side by side and looked at the light below. 10 beings. 1 fortress, 2 trees, mushrooms, water, and light that was visible in the darkness of hell from a very great distance, to where there were still people who did not know that one could hold on, to where there were those who had lost hope and did not know that there was a place called Eden that glowed green in the night, and to where, sooner or later, those who did not want there to be a garden in hell would come from, but that would be later. Now there was light, and Damien looked at it and thought not about threats. He thought about the 3rd tree, about the 4th gutter, about how if the acidic puddles were neutralized, there would be enough water for an entire forest, about how a forest in hell would give air that could be breathed without bitterness, about how if the air became cleaner, those who had not yet decided to die would come here, and about how then Eden would become not just a garden, but the beginning of something hell had never seen. He did not know what they would call it, but he was already building it, stone by stone, Tree by tree, person by person, in the darkest place that existed, a living light was growing, and that was enough. For now. Damien was not the first to understand it, and not Song, and not even Vest, who usually felt danger before the others. Sina was the first to understand it. She stood by the outer wall at dawn when the red sky had not yet become brighter and suddenly said, "The air has changed." Damien turned. In what sense? Sina slowly inhaled. It is as if watching. It sounded strange, but Damien did not brush it off. In hell, strange things were most often forerunners of trouble, not stupidity. Song came out of the greenhouse a minute later, with the face of a person who had already seen the same thing but did not want to be the first to say it. "The pressure in the air is changing," he said. "Weather? No. Too even. This is not weather. This is presence." Vest, standing at the gate, only threw briefly, "They are coming to us, not a pack. Not lone monsters, not wanderers, not half-demons, not hungry former people. Others were coming. Damien saw them from afar, 3 figures walking slowly across the scorching plain, as if the heat did not touch them at all. They did not hide, did not run, did not look around. They simply approached. "These are not the ones the Old One has in mind," Vest said quietly. "How do you know?" Damien asked. Vest looked at him. "Because these ones are not afraid. They come like masters." When they came closer, it became visible that they were not exactly demons. And not exactly people. The shapes of their bodies were too even, too whole. Dark skin with a metallic shine, white eyes without pupils, strange plates on their shoulders as if part of their body had been cast or forged, not grown. Damien immediately understood. These were not victims of hell. This was its hellish administration. One of them stopped before the outer wall and spoke in a voice that did not rise but was heard everywhere at once. "You who create a green spot in the scorched zone, come out." Damien did not move. "Who are you?" he asked. "The one who watches the balance." Sina exhaled quietly. Song turned pale, or would have if his skin still allowed paleness to be seen. Vest tensed. "A balancer," he whispered. "A bad thing." Damien did not take his eyes off the guest. "What do you want?" "Inspection." The voice was empty like stone. "You have interfered with what must remain dead. I planted a tree." "You change the order." "Order is when everything rots and dies?" "Then it is bad." Silence. Then the second of the envoys took a step forward. "You speak like the living. That is rare, because I am alive." "Was alive," that one corrected. Damien felt cold inside. These beings did not see him as a person. They saw him as a failure, as a violation of the rules. "I am not going to stop," he said. The balancer was silent for a second. "We know that was the most frightening thing of all. They had not come to destroy Eden immediately. Not yet. First to count." The third of the envoys stopped by the wall and began an inspection. Not with hands, with his gaze. And Damien suddenly understood that he was not just looking. He was measuring. How much stone? How much water? How much living matter? How much fire? How many people? And the most unpleasant thing, how much more could become alive if they were given time? "You have no right," Damien said. The balancer turned his head. "Right has no meaning here. Structure matters. Then I am building structure." "You are building an exception." It was said calmly, without contempt, and that only made it worse. "Exceptions destroy the rule," he continued. "If you allow the growth of one green island, others will see, and try to repeat it. And is that bad?" "For the system, yes." Damien clenched his teeth. "So your system wants everything to be dead?" "No," the balancer answered. "It wants everything to be defined. Living things can also be defined. Living things cannot." Damien understood that arguing was useless. Before him was not a villain in the human sense. It was a function, a machine representing the law of hell. And that was exactly why he was dangerous. The envoys left as calmly as they had come. But after they left, Eden seemed to become smaller. Not physically. Psychologically. Santa was the first to feel it. She sat by the wall, hugging her knees. "They will return," she said. "Yes," Damien answered. "They will count us as a mistake." "Yes, and?" Damien looked at the tree. "And that means we must become not a mistake, but a new norm." Song exhaled. That is impossible. There is already a tree in hell, and mushrooms, and water. Which of that is impossible? Song was silent, then slowly nodded. Then we need to speed up. Yes, how much? Damien looked at the walls, enough so that by the next visit they see not a garden but a city. This was not a joke, it was a plan. They began building at once, not waiting, not discussing for too long. The third wall had to be not around the first garden, but around the expanded zone, where new beds, a second row of trees, and water reservoirs were already planned. The northern sector of Eden was chosen for expansion. There it was a little cooler and there was less direct heat from the cracks. Ami immediately said that this was the best place for a young tree. Song suggested making a moist stone ridge with a mushroom layer there. Theo drew the outline of the new perimeter on the ground, so quickly as if he had always been doing this. Vezd asked, "Why so fast?" "Because they have already been here," Damien answered. "That was not a visit, it was a measurement. And what now? Now we will let them see what they cannot simply evaluate in one pass." "What exactly?" Damien looked at the plan. Growth. The third wall had to be more massive than the first two, because now Eden had to do more than hide. It had to withstand the pressure of the world. Damien came up with a system of internal supports, not just circles, but sector division. Each zone had its own purpose: water, trees, mushrooms, reserve, housing, defense, emergency exit. Theo supported it immediately. "If something breaks through, we will not lose everything at once." "Exactly," Damien said. Song added, "And if they manage to destroy one sector, the others will continue working." Damien nodded. This was no longer a base, it was an organism. And they came. Not those who were already almost monsters, not agents of the system, not envoys, just people. First 2, then 4, then a group of 7 walking toward the smell of water and light. All had the same story. They had wandered, died, hidden, grown tired, heard that somewhere there was a place where one could avoid becoming a beast. The stone perimeter of Eden now glowed stronger in the night, and it was like a beacon. Damien did not accept them all at once. First a check, then work, then an oath to the rules. Sena was the harshest of all. "Do you want to enter?" she asked the next arrival. "Then do not touch the tree, do not steal water, do not play with monsters, and do not think that if you reach this place, everyone owes you everything." Some left, but most stayed. Because the choice was simple. Outside, decay; here, a chance. When there were enough people, Damien for the first time allowed himself to speak not about survival, but about a garden. Not one tree, a garden. Ami designed the new beds. She used several principles. High stone beds to protect roots from heat, deepened channels for water, mushroom bundles near root zones, dark stone walls accumulating heat and giving it off at night, and separate plots for experimental fruits. Song handled water and soil mixtures. Sena handled labor distribution and gathering. Theo handled construction. Nar handled outer defense and those who still came from outside. Vezd handled scouting. Brog handled stone. And Damien handled everything at once. The new garden began to appear slowly, first as an expansion, then as a pattern. Then as the idea that in hell one could make not one island of life, but a chain of islands. The old one returned a few days after the second visit of the envoys. This time, not to the wall. He came in the quietest part of the night, when only Nar and Vezd were on duty. Damien was called at once. The old one looked the same, or almost the same clothing, the same voice. But there was something heavier in his movements, as if he carried more than the last time. "They are not pleased," he said without greeting. "I know. Now they will decide that this needs to be closed." Damien was silent. "Can they be stopped?" The old one looked at the tree. "Only if you do something that is inconvenient for them, not only to destroy, but also to explain." "What does that mean?" "Spread life." This phrase hung heavily. "You said that as if it were a weapon." "It is," the old one answered. "In this place, life is a weapon against the system." Damien understood. Not completely, but enough. How exactly? Not one tree, not one garden, not one fortress, a network, many points, many places. Then they will not be able to say that it is an accident. And if they destroy everything, piece by piece, then it will take them time. And time is what you still have more of for now. Damien nodded slowly. "Do you know what will happen next?" The Old One was silent for a while. There will be a strike. When? Soon. Damien did not wait for the strike. He decided to create what could only be called one word. A network. Not just Eden. Neighboring points. He sent Nair and Vez to look for places where there was at least some natural moisture, shade, or mineral structure capable of holding water. Song gave them small filters and advice on purification. Sina recorded the routes and marked stable zones. Theo designed portable stone barriers, small modules that could be quickly assembled on site. Brog even suggested making stones with even edges in advance, so assembly would be faster. You want a city? Ami asked when she heard the plan. Damien looked at the map. There were already several points on it. Main Eden, Northern Reserve, the crater with clean water, the mushroom place, the site by the sulfur crack where Song had found minerals. If everything works out, each point will be autonomous. Not completely, but enough so that a strike on one will not destroy the whole system. Yes, he said. I want a city of gardens. Sina smiled for the first time in a long time. That sounds almost beautiful. It should. The strike came unexpectedly, but not entirely. The Old One had warned that they would try to destroy not the center, but the periphery. And that was exactly what happened. At night, the Northern Reserve, where Song had begun purifying a deeper source, was attacked. Not envoys, not directly the system. Monsters. Many. A pack gathered by someone's hand. Among them were two almost human ones, clearly with remnants of consciousness, but already in a severe state. Damien learned about the attack from a flash of signal, a small fire at the distant point. Theo had invented this system of signal stones with illumination. If pressed and the right powder was ignited, a visible burst appeared. He saw the signal and understood immediately. North. Everyone jumped up. Nar was already running to the gate, Vez to the farthest route, Damien with Lena and Song to the reserve. When they arrived, it became clear the enemy was not simply striking at the water. It was striking at the filters, the stone reservoirs, and the road. It wanted to force the reserve to lose function. But the Northern Reserve was already part of the network. Theo and two new people were holding the entrance. Brog was dragging stones, closing the breach. Song, seeing the damage, clenched his teeth and immediately began rebuilding the filter. Damien understood that they needed not just a fight. They needed rebuilding right in the middle of the attack. Hold the left side, he shouted. Do not let them reach the central bowl. The monsters tore inward, but now Eden had depth. They were not fighting for one place, they were fighting for an entire system. And this was already something completely different. During the attack, something happened that no one expected. Ami, who was by the northern ridge, saw how the roots of one of the young trees began to glow. Not strongly, but clearly. And not just glow. They seemed to release a thin network through the soil. Damien, she shouted. Look! He turned around. Along the stone ridge under the roots ran a barely noticeable light, a weak greenish-white pulse spreading from the tree to the mushrooms and farther to another section. Song froze. This is interaction. What? Roots in the fungal network. They are connecting. He was already speaking quickly, almost in delight. We thought it was just growth, but this is a transmission system. Damien looked, not believing. The underground network, fungal mycelium and roots, had begun to react to stress. This was not just a biological process. This was protection. The soil itself held moisture. The tree strengthened the exchange. The fungi directed water into the needed sector. It was incredible. And in that moment, Damien understood the main thing. Eden no longer depended only on his hands. It had become a living mechanism. The attack choked out. The monsters retreated, losing part of the pack on the approaches. But the most important thing was not that. The most important thing was that the plants answered. Damien stood in mud, ash, and hot wind, and looked at the light in the roots. And for the first time in hell, he felt that he was not simply building a garden. He was building an organism that knew how to defend itself. He came in the morning, alone, without an escort, without the plates on his shoulders like the first envoys. This was a different kind of creature, thinner, taller. The face was hidden by a long mask made of something like black glass. The voice was cold but not empty. You are changing too much. Damien stood before the outer wall. Yes, you are creating a network. Yes, you are involving the living in resistance. The living already resists on its own. The envoy was silent. The system has recorded this, he finally said. An exception becomes law if it spreads. Damien clenched his fists. That means you admit we can become the norm. Silence. Very long. Then the envoy answered. We acknowledge that your existence requires reconsideration. That was almost a victory. Almost. And what will happen? Damien asked. There will be a decision. When? Soon, and he left. In the evening, everyone gathered in the main hall. Damien told everything, without emotions as usual, but this time it was harder. They are deciding, he said. That means Eden is already big enough to be considered a problem. No one rejoiced. Not even Vest. Because this was not good news. It meant that the next strike would not be accidental and not local. It would be an attempt to stop development. Sina asked, and what can we do? Damien looked at everyone. At Nar, at Lena, at Song, at Ami, at Theo, at Brog, at Vest. At the others who had come and stayed. Then he said, take one more step. What kind? Ami asked. He looked at the map. Move Eden farther. Create one more point of life, and another, and another. If they want to crush one garden, let them face a forest. The hall became quiet, then Theo slowly nodded. Garden network. Yes, Damien said, a network of gardens. Song exhaled. This is no longer a shelter. No, Damien answered. This is already a front. That night, Eden glowed brighter than usual. The green light of trees, the orange light of mushrooms, whitish veins under the ground, water in the channels. Stones of the walls which no longer merely held the heat, but stored meaning. Damien stood by the outer perimeter and looked at the light in the night. In a world where everything was supposed to be burned out and empty, not simply a garden had appeared, a network of life had appeared. And now it was no longer only he who wanted to build. Everyone who understood wanted to build. If hell can be made better than paradise, then paradise is not a place. It is work. And it had already begun.